Well, thank you. Welcome to the Longmont Museum. I'm Justin Veach. I'm the manager of the museum's Stewart Auditorium, and I curate public programs. Thanks for coming out this evening. Before we get going, I want to thank a few folks who make our programming possible. The Scientific and Cultural Facilities District, the Stewart Family Foundation, the Friends of the Longmont Museum, and of course, our museum members. Do we happen to have any museum members with us this evening? Hey, members. Thank you. We simply can't do all that we do without you. If you're interested in finding out what it means to be a member of the Longmont Museum, feel free to ask me or one of our staff after the program, and we'll tell you everything you ever wanted to know about being a member of the Longmont Museum. I also want to thank you all for bearing with us, bearing with our parking issues currently. We are growing. The biggest museum in Boulder County is getting bigger. We're adding a 4,000 square foot gallery space, a new lobby, new entrance. So that means we'll have a dedicated kids space, a dedicated history gallery, and then a new 4,000 square foot rotating gallery space. So lots happening here. Including impacted parking. So thanks for hoofing it over to us through the neighborhoods and all. I also want to thank our media sponsors, the KGNU Community Radio out of Boulder, KUNC, and the Colorado Sound. Tonight's program is being offered as part of our Thursday Nights at the Museum series. In case you don't know, every Thursday evening we offer a little something, a talk, a film and a talk, a concert, a performance, you name it. We go for eclectic here. Oftentimes our programming is associated with the exhibition that we have up. We don't have exhibitions up right now because our galleries are closed until next fall. So we've been we've unleashed ourselves from the subject of exhibitions this fall, and we're doing all sorts of amazing things. The Longmont Museum is a center for culture in northern Colorado where people of all ages explore history, experience art, and discover new ideas through dynamic programs, exhibitions, and events. That means we're a multidisciplinary museum, which means we should be doing a little bit of everything here, including history. Tonight, we're going to be looking back at Colorado's rather sordid history with the KKK. And we're going to start out by viewing a film, a 25-minute film that was produced by Rocky Mountain PBS. God bless public broadcasting. And this was offered as part of their Colorado Experience series back in 2017. Without further ado, here's Colorado and the KKK.
Colorado once had the second highest per capita membership in the KKK. Hi, I'm John Ferrugia. The 1920s saw an unprecedented statewide wave of power and influence of the Ku Klux Klan, and the effect of this hate lingers today. And now, Colorado Experience, KKK.
Every so often, society goes crazy, and the fringe elements of our community becomes mainstream. And that was never more apparent than in the 1920s when the Ku Klux Klan took over politics in Colorado.
They spelled the state of Colorado with a K as opposed to a C. Everybody was determined by the Grand Dragon. The governor, the state senator, city mayor, police chief, the sheriff.
It was almost 100 years ago, and here we are again with a similar environment, politically and socially.
It is a cautionary tale. If we are not in denial of the power of the Klan in Colorado, we are better set up to be more honest about ourselves and who we are now.
This program was funded by the History Colorado State Historical Fund,
supporting projects throughout the state to preserve, protect, and interpret Colorado's architectural and archaeological treasures. History Colorado State Historical Fund. Create the future, honor the past.
with support from the Denver Public Library, History Colorado, with additional funding and support from these fine organizations. And viewers like you, thank you.
Between 1921 and 1925, the Klan flourishes in Colorado.
The Klan was prominent throughout the state and had a chapter clavering in all 64 counties.
The original Klan, right after the Civil War, for 6 or 7 years in the South, was a crucial force for forcing black subordination. And then there's the Klan of the 1920s, which is more or less nationwide. And then in our time, there is a recreated third round of the Klan.
We need to study the KKK for the simple reason that the terror that they inflicted on this country in the past is not revisited in the present and doesn't move forward in the future.
It's really hard to imagine how casually racist American society was in the 1920s. It was not unheard of to have lynchings of Italian immigrants or Mexicans or African Americans, even in a place like Colorado.
One of the great indicators of this growing xenophobia was D.W. Griffith's movie, The Birth of the Nation, probably the bestseller of its time, picturing a picture of these innocent white women in the South being haunted by blacks, glorifying the old South, denigrating black folks.
It showed white males dressed up in Klan uniforms, standing up for the white race against a threat. They were depicted as knights. They were on horses and they had lances.
And it really was a movie that was about the scourge of black folks in the country.
A Georgia businessman, a member of various fraternal lodges named William Joseph Simmons, revived the Ku Klux Klan. He created a social organization like the Rotary Club, except that it was based on Simmons' definition of 100% Americanism: white, native-born Protestant. And he created a hierarchy of recruiters. They called them Kleagles, who would go around the country and start local chapters, sell memberships to the Klan.
William Simmons shows up at the Brown Palace Hotel and in 1921 sets up a little group called the Denver Doers Club. And this evolves into what becomes the Klan.
The Ku Klux Klan comes to Denver and quickly spreads across the state, with strongholds in Grand Junction and Canyon City. The Klan ideology mirrors the sentiments of the day. People are eager to try something new.
Coming out of the First World War, Americans were done with international adventures.
We were just coming off a period of tremendous reform, the progressive era. There was a tremendous crackdown against labor unions and others who might be affiliated with socialism.
Prohibition, women's suffrage, urban reform, immigration reform. Americans by the 1920s had enough. There were massive strikes in the United States. A lot of this unrest was blamed on Eastern and Southern European immigrants.
And also this ties into the prohibition issue. Those Irish were still drinking their whiskey, the Germans still wanted their beer, the Italians still drank their wine, despite the law. These were lawless foreigners. We should send them back to wherever they came from.
In places like Pueblo and Trinidad, coal companies are importing huge waves of new immigrants, and the Western Slope fruit orchards needed cheap seasonal labor as well.
There were people who believed that our nation was changing and not in a way that was positive for them. This provided fertile ground for the Klan to recruit in Colorado.
The widespread failure of Prohibition seemed to many Americans to indicate that America's morals were sliding. The automobile created these new private spaces for young people to get together.
The appeal in the 1920s for a lot of women was to get out and work. The Roaring Twenties, shorter skirts. The Klan was aghast at these kinds of things.
The Klan to this day always did see themselves as a law and order institution, that they were protecting America.
This crime fixation, free-floating anxiety, what do we do after a world war? We have to get things pulled back together. We have to have the central values of 100% Americanness.
And the Klan, they were going to stop the corruption and bring law and order to the Queen City of the Plains.
The Klan has always been, at least historically, a very broad-based organization.
Opposed alcohol and opposed extramarital sex, pregnancy out of wedlock, Catholics.
It was based upon discrimination against minority groups, the Negro and the Catholic and the Jew. There are a lot of people who fall for that kind of thing.
There's a weird hierarchy of titles. The Imperial Wizard is the national leader. That was Simmons. The leader of a state was known as the Grand Dragon. And Colorado's Grand Dragon was a man named John Galen Locke. John Galen Locke had moved to Colorado as a young man. He had served in the Spanish-American War in the Philippines, and then he got a medical degree in homeopathy.
He was a person of excessive confidence and vision, very arrogant. He was a figure who knew how to work systems and how to be not an elected official himself, but to manipulate them within an inch of their lives.
John Galen Locke was an odd-looking man. He was rotund.
He weighed 250 pounds. He was short. He was fat. Some people called him a toad. He set up a private office at 1325 Glenarm Place. You would see John Galen Locke sitting there in a throne, guarded by 2 Great Danes and also bodyguards.
He was reasonably intelligent. His office was filled with armor and things that came from the Middle Ages. He was a romantic. He thoroughly believed in what he was doing.
He kept, as his personal secretary, a Catholic. He was married to a Catholic. His lawyer was Jewish.
He was really a quite courageous man indeed. Dr. Locke had no animosity whatsoever for Jewish or Catholic or Negro. He loved these people. He would do anything to help them if they were ill. And he was so unconscious of the social consequences of what he was doing. It never occurred to him that he was doing a great disservice. To him, the Klan was a wonderful opportunity for showmanship. Oh, believe me, those Klansmen were sincere. They thought this was good. They were going to make Klansmen out of every Catholic in the state. They were going to make Klansmen out of every Jew before they got through. They thought they were saving the world.
They preyed upon these people and just scared them to death. They applied economic pressures that were fantastic, and many bankruptcies were caused by the ostracizing of the people.
Locke's primary motivation was not racism, but power. Under his rule, he turned Colorado's Ku Klux Klan into an extremely powerful voting bloc.
John Galen Locke had 138 paid organizers, which start out usually with respectable established institutions such as the Masons or the Protestant churches, and they would appear all of a sudden in their regalia in the middle of a service and donate, give money, build up goodwill, and say, we will protect you against these foreigners, against these evil elements.
Some of our best men got sucked into this thing and found out afterward just how badly they had been misled.
We were Klan Central. Colorado had the second highest per capita membership after Indiana. There were maybe 35 or 40,000 members. Nobody really knows. The Klan claimed as many as 75,000 or even up to a 250,000 what they called loyal residents.
From the high and mighty to just your average everyday coal miner. Everybody was in the Klan.
Locke was pretty good in familiarizing himself with the powers that be, with people like Gano Center, who ran a very popular restaurant here, and he changed his name to the Cool, Cozy Cafe. He also sold Siena cigars. The Catholics, you are not Americans.
Gano Center was a grand cyclops, which is a regional director of the Ku Klux Klan, and there were very few people in Colorado who were more enthusiastic about Klan membership than Gano and Lorena Center.
Laura Center organized the Women's Auxiliary of the Klan, which got to be a pretty big deal here. They were particularly worried about orphans going to any Catholic orphanages.
So the Klan has women members and women leaders. There's nothing surprising about that.
In 1921, the liberal, labor-oriented newspaper, the Denver Express, begins covering the Klan. In reaction, the KKK closes its Denver recruiting office and its Kliegels set up in Colorado Springs, where they have little luck. They are welcomed in Pueblo with promises to enforce law and order against the many immigrants working in the steel mills and coal mines. Back in Denver, the Klan exerts its power.
Warren Gash received a letter in January of 1922 threatening him.
This colored man who had been ordered out of town by the Klan simply because he was a caretaker for some widow. And the rumor went out that he was too familiar with her.
This letter said, your hide is worth more to us than to you. We're going to get you. And he took this to Philip Van Cise, the city district attorney.
Van Cise was appalled. He couldn't believe that a citizen of Denver would receive such a virulent, nasty death threat. Philip Van Cise, he was in the Colorado National Guard. He served as a peacekeeper at Ludlow. As soon as the Klan reared its head, Philip Van Cise became one of its earliest and most vocal opponents.
He was the type of man who would prosecute his own grandmother if she violated the law, and by George, that's the kind of public official we needed. For instance, a packing of juries.
The jury commissioner, being a Ku Kluxer himself, the jury lists were made up in the office of Dr. Locke down on Glenarm Street.
I would say 75% of the police department belonged to the Klan.
You didn't get a promotion if you weren't a member of the Klan.
Van Cise decides to investigate the Klan, gets 5 members of his staff to join, infiltrate the Klan to try to build up evidence against them.
In the summer of 1922, the Klan holds its first public meeting in Estes Park with thousands of hooded Klansmen gathering. Within 1 year, Denver's Mayor Benjamin Stapleton openly supports the Klan and offers city space for them to spread their message. While the Klan's popularity grows, so does their illegal actions, including kidnapping and conspiracy.
Patrick Walker, a 19-year-old, supposedly had intimate relationships with a young woman. John Galen Locke found out about this, and so they kidnapped him, and they threatened to beat him or even kill him if he didn't marry the young woman. And so Walker did so, but then he went to the police. Ultimately, Locke and other conspirators were indicted for kidnapping. There are dozens of accounts of harassment, of intimidation, of cross burnings in people's yards, of bombs on people's front porches, of beatings, of kidnapping.
Walter Walker was described as a little Napoleon. He was already the most powerful Democratic politician on the Western Slope. He runs the Grand Junction Daily Sentinel, and he wanted to be the Grand Cyclops of the Grand Junction Klan. It was in August of 1924. The Grand Junction Daily Sentinel described it as silent and impressive display, estimated at 500 fully gowned Klansmen walking down Main Street. 3 crosses burned in the night. Dr. John Galen Locke himself had come over, so the Klan is fully here.
In the fall of 1924, things did not go as Walter Walker planned, and Grand Junction Klansmen choose realtor D.B. Wright as their first exalted Cyclops. Walker, who helped to bring the Klan to the area, did not take this rejection well and slowly begins to use his newspaper to thwart their efforts. In Denver, the district attorney Philip Van Cise and 100 prominent Republicans formed the Visible Government League to fight the KKK. Van Cise holds a public meeting to expose Klan secrets, but it's disrupted. According to the Denver Express, it was a meeting hall packed with enraged, shouting, shrieking men and women gone mad with fanatic Klan frenzy.
They were pretty roused up on both sides, Klan and anti-Klan.
And it was just on the same line with the boycotts that the Klan put out. They would distribute these mimeograph sheets on who to patronize and who not to patronize. Catholics and Jews really felt the pressure.
These hoods and robes that were sold for a rather substantial price added to the coffers of the Klan. They filled the heart of the Negro and the businessman of non-Ku Klux connection with fear. They refused to patronize anybody who didn't belong to the Klan. The economic boycotting was fantastic. People sensing power. They worked through the Republican Party. They took possession of the Republican Party. They worked in the precincts. Their leaders attended the caucuses, and they gained control, practically 100% of the Republican Party at that time.
The membership increased very rapidly, and the members of the city council, from the mayor on down, all the city officials, with very few exceptions, were members of the Klan.
You couldn't get elected to anything in the city and county of Denver unless you were affiliated with the Ku Klux Klan or had their blessing.
In the election of 1924, Klansmen won overwhelming control of the Colorado state legislature.
The peak of the Klan's influence in many ways was the embrace of Denver Mayor Ben Stapleton of the Klan ideology and acceptance of their support and his use of them. It harnessed the power of a very angry white group that thought things were changing for them.
He was kind of a mild-mannered, nerdish-looking guy with his spectacles and does start to clean up the city.
Ben Stapleton was a politically ambitious person, so he gets elected, and then the disillusionment hits pretty fast, and he is up for a recall. And the only way to survive his recall election is to be very explicit in assuring the Klan leadership, I'm with you. The Klan can trust me to be your official. So he does survive his recall with very clear Klan support.
Philip Van Cise lost his re-election bid for Denver District Attorney because of his war on the Ku Klux Klan.
Clarence Morley agrees to sell his soul. He wanted to be governor, he got to be governor, and he got to make statements about the great movement that he was a part of.
Clarence Morley is this tall, kind of spiny man. He looks almost mousy, particularly next to John Galen Locke, his hero. He's only in office for 1 term, and after that he's actually indicted for mail fraud and our only governor ever to go to prison. The Klan kept meeting, and every time they outgrew their facilities, so they finally went to this huge building, the Overland Park Mills, where they had huge gatherings.
Allegedly, more than 30,000 people showed up at a Klan rally. Large-scale public rallies were one of the hallmarks of the Klan, to show their power, to show their unity, and to show the potential for intimidation that they had.
So each of these Klan meetings would be a plain rabble-rousing. Dr. Locke, he was very emotional. He was a very effective speaker. After anything he said, there was tremendous applause.
They were famous for their gatherings on Lookout Mountain, just outside of Golden. They would burn a cross there, have a big ritual, and you get a lecture on 100% Americanism. And of course, you'd be told how to vote.
By this time, Walker is not a member of the Klan. In fact, he'd been thrown out for not being supportive enough. The Klan not only takes over the city council, they start placing some of their members with the Grand Junction police force. But they've made a very significant enemy in Walter Walker.
By 1925, the Invisible Empire is at the height of its power in Colorado. They are highly visible across the state with public picnics, banquets, boxing tournaments, and performances by the Imperial Klan Band.
They have charity events, they have concerts.
For a group that claimed that it preferred to operate in secret, the Ku Klux Klan loved spectacle. And the Klan, of course, created its own newspapers, the Rocky Mountain American. The Klansmen were sophisticated marketers who would use popular culture in order to achieve their ends.
Your everyday average white person may not have had such bigoted views, but they certainly condoned it. It was made very clear in Denver that black folks couldn't live beyond a certain street.
They would post notices on the Immaculate Conception Cathedral or Temple Emmanuel's doors reminding that the Catholics or the Jews were not Americans. They would pass out pink slips into the mailboxes of African Americans or Jews or Catholics or immigrants, reminding them that they're not American.
Older African Americans will tell you that the Klan initiated a major race riot, marching in, burning houses, physically removing people, shooting, stabbing. There were deaths.
There were many people who stood up to criticize the Klan, to expose them for what they were. Clarence Holmes was an African-American dentist who formed the Cosmopolitan Group, an interracial group of people who came together and socialized, had a cross burned on his front lawn. The Denver Catholic Register made an intense effort to expose the inner workings of the Klan, and the editor, Father Smith, was almost run over in the streets.
Monsignor Gregory Smith makes a point of trying to get in and listing those people and then do a counter boycott. Don't go to patronize any of these people. So he kept fighting the Klan constantly.
With so many efforts going to take down the Klan, the tides started to turn. Grand Dragon Locke was arrested on charges of kidnapping. Sensing the change, Denver's Mayor Stapleton decides to turn on the group that helped keep him in office.
Stapleton, who was going to be their creature, their guy, he ends up recognizing the vulnerability of the Klan.
They got too domineering for him. He just couldn't follow the orders of Dr. Locke and his subordinates.
And initiating some vice raids against Klan's members and actually being a force that points out the wickedness within. He seems to be a person who did what he had to do for political expediency.
He recruited and deputized American legionnaires to raid Klan-operated gambling dens and bootlegging facilities. He joined the Klan primarily to receive their political support, and when the winds of political fortunes blew against the Klan, he was one of the first people to turn on them.
Ironically, Stapleton comes up with one of the most eloquent denunciations. True Americanism does not hide under a sheet.
And then when it became known that the Internal Revenue Service was investigating the income of the Klan, and particularly Dr. Locke, they held a special meeting, and Dr. Locke sitting there with his head in his hands.
The imperial wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, Hiram Evans, asked John Galen Locke to step down.
He was accused by the National Klan of keeping more than his share of what you paid for membership dues.
Locke was ultimately indicted for tax evasion and spent some time in jail. And the Klan split into two groups in 1925. The Ku Klux Klan, which moved its headquarters to Canyon City, and the Minutemen of Colorado, which was a nativist, white nationalist group run by John Galen Locke. Once America really began to enjoy the prosperity of the post-war boom, Americans felt that the anxieties that had driven them into the Klan were not as important anymore. And once the Klan was shown to be corrupt, the center couldn't hold.
There's a traffic stop in downtown Grand Junction. A Mexican-American bootlegger is actually killed by local Klan. Walter Walker now uses his newspaper to go against the Klan. And right after this, Walker is walking down Main Street and he is accosted by one of the Klan policemen, beaten in broad daylight. The next day, Walker begins a strong editorial campaign against the Klan. 2 weeks later, Walker's son is mysteriously accosted and beat up. The final blow was the 1927 Grand Junction City Council elections. His influence was strong, and the Klan is entirely swept out of power. Certainly his legacy has suffered. Was he a man of his times? Of course. A lot of people were joining the Klan in the 1920s.
It was a big step down for the Klan to leave Denver and move to Canyon City. It represented the decline of the Klan, that they could no longer operate in an intense public arena like Denver.
In Canyon City, there's a lot of Klan activity, paving roads, building schools. The Canyon City Klan seems to have been more of a public works and institution building Klan.
They come to power in 24. By 26, 27, they're already on the way out.
There's some theories among political scientists that when folks get a lot of power, unless it's checked, the power becomes unhinged. And so it was a hubris thing and an arrogance that caused the Klan to fall in Colorado. I mean, at some point, folks come to their senses. At least you hope they do.
In 1928, Grand Dragon Fred Arnold dies of blood poisoning, bringing the Colorado KKK to an end. The fiery cross on his headstone blazing for eternity.
Between 1920s and the 1970s, the KKK existed all over the country at various incantations. The KKK existed in the Denver, Colorado area, Lakewood, Colorado, and in Colorado Springs. It was not organized. That was one reason why I, as a black man, was able to conduct an undercover investigation and place 3 undercover cops into their group and conduct an undercover investigation for approximately 7.5 months. These guys were always carrying guns because all they talked about was wanting to kill blacks, wanting to kill Jews, wanting to burn crosses. At any time, my guys could have arrested about 9 of these guys for illegal possession of firearms. But we let it go because we were hoping to take this to more advanced criminal charges, which never materialized. We had 2 gay clubs in Colorado Springs at that time. They told us they wanted to bomb these 2 gay clubs. One of their aims was to try and steal automatic weapons from Fort Carson, Colorado. We determined that they had 2 military personnel assigned to NORAD, the North American Air Defense Command. So my investigation reached the Pentagon. The Grand Wizard, David Duke, on January 10, 1979, made an appearance in Colorado Springs. David Duke was the new face of the Ku Klux Klan. He never wore his Klan robe in public. He never used the so-called N-word. He was always very polite, very well groomed, very professional in public. In private, he was hellfire. He changed the face of the Klan. He professionalized it. The case ended because the chapter president wanted Ron Stallworth to become the chapter leader. And when I went to my chief of police and told him this, he said, shut the investigation down now. Ron Stallworth Klansman disappeared that day. During the entire 7.5 months of this investigation, no cross was ever burned in Colorado Springs. The KKK of the late 70s didn't end. People have to get out of their head the fact that the KKK ends. They never end. They go dormant.
In the 1920s, in the 1960s, in the 1990s, there was a resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan.
The ideals and the beliefs that allowed for the Klan to rise to power in Colorado, those things never really left. The aftermath carried on for years and years, and some would argue it still does. And even in the way that we interact with each other, there's still that carryover effect.
Hate-inspired vandalism continues to this day. KKK is spray-painted on homes and vehicles numerous times in the Denver metro area in 2016, and swastikas mysteriously appear on schools and religious buildings every few years. The Southern Poverty Law Center identifies 892 hate groups in the United States, with 14 in Colorado, including the Ku Klux Knights of the Ku Klux Klan in Colorado Springs.
They are a domestic terrorist group in any form that they take, in any generation.
One of the beauties of the First Amendment is that it provides the opportunity for us to go into a public space and have all those ideas compete.
Ben Stapleton, he and others like him are the most important cautionary tales about monitor your own ambitions, decide when your ambitions are tempting you.
People like Van Cise were these beacons of light in a very dark time in Colorado. It wasn't the crosses that were the beacons. It was the people who stood up for what was right.
And we do have these periodic cycles. We wanted to determine who was an American, define who was an American in the 1920s. We're doing some of the same things right now.
There's still a number of hate groups that find a home in Colorado, but there's a large number of people in Colorado who don't tolerate that.
With now the anti-Muslim sentiment in this country, there's always a group to look down on and hate.
Have things improved? Yeah, they have improved. Are things perfect? No. And I don't think they will be until the folks in this country really get real about having a conversation about race in this country.
We all should get along, but all it takes is one person to express hatred.
And if we look at the history of this nation, whenever we've been given the opportunity to do the right thing, we stand up, we do the right thing. Although we may slip and fall along the way, we eventually get around to doing the right thing.
Well, that was an eye-opener. So I want to thank the folks at Rocky Mountain PBS for allowing us to show this evening. What a great program Colorado Experience is. And that particular episode was fantastic. So we're going to have a little conversation here about the KKK generally. And I'd like to introduce these two fine ladies who are with us this evening. Elizabeth Beaudoin is the Curator of History here at the Longmont Museum. She oversees the museum's historical collections, more than 17,000 objects, 10,000 photographs, and thousands of documents relating to Longmont and the St. Vrain Valley. She grew up in southern New Hampshire and holds a BA in art history and a BFA in painting and drawing from the University of New Hampshire, along with an MA in art and architectural history from the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Before focusing on her museum role, she built nearly 8 years of experience working in museums and nonprofit settings. She lives around the corner with her 2 dogs, whose names I can't remember, but we'll ask her
Teddy and
after.
Daisy.
Who?
Teddy and Daisy.
Teddy and Daisy. And to Elizabeth's left here is none other than Patty Limerick. She's one of the most influential historians of the American West, a longtime professor of history at CU Boulder. She has built her career on bringing historical perspective into public life and making scholarship accessible far beyond academia. Patty is the director of the Applied History Initiative and previously served for more than 3 decades as faculty director of the Center of the American West, which she co-founded in '86. Born and raised in Banning, California, Patty received her BA from the University of California at Santa Cruz, go Banana Slugs, and her PhD in American Studies from Yale University. A MacArthur Fellow and recipient of CU's Hazel Barnes Prize, Patty has led several national scholarly organizations, advised major documentary and film projects, and served twice as a Pulitzer Prize jurist, chairing the history jury in 2011. Her groundbreaking book, The Legacy of Conquest, The Unbroken Past of the American West, established her as a leading voice in the new Western history, reframing the West as a region defined by ongoing conflict, adaptation, and continuity, rather than a closed frontier. She expanded on these themes in Something in the Soil, and later in A Ditch in Time, a sweeping history of Denver water that blends environmental history with public policy insight. Patty is a regular contributor to major publications, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the Denver Post, High Country News, and the New Yorker, where she brings historical perspective to contemporary issues on the West. Together, her scholarly works and public commentary have made her one of the most widely read and cited interpreters of Western American history today. Please welcome Patty Limerick back to the Longmont Museum. We're lucky to have you just down the road. Thanks for making the trip. So, do you remember working on that project, RMP, the Rocky Mountain PBS project?
No.
No.
This is yes, of course, that would be me. I could recognize myself. That's good.
Yeah.
But I have done a lot of things, and I'm hoping everyone has that experience of just like, wow, I knew all that stuff once. So it was an interesting thing. I certainly know the outlines of Benjamin Stapleton's bad compromise with himself and so on, but it's really just too fun. It's an out-of-body experience to think, well, that sounds pretty good up there. So I do remember the people who do Colorado Experience are great, and I totally remember working with them and thinking, this is really well handled. The great thing about being filmed for interviews is that you know they're going to edit. So you can just be very comfortable and keep saying things, and then you know they're not going to use it all, which is a huge comfort for everyone. To know.
We won't use all of this. We'll be editing this later.
And once you get that, it's a joy just to be chatting.
Yeah.
And then it kind of a joy to think, well, that's interesting. I know I was a witness. That's the wrong term entirely. That sounds like I'm in court. The documentary that they made on the gay rights movement and how important that was, how important Denver was in launching that. And that one I actually think, well, I should watch that again because that comes up and I would like to know what it was I knew.
How many Colorado Experience programs have you been involved in? Like many?
Oh, how would I possibly know the answer to that?
Well, quite a few. I'm thinking maybe quite a few.
Right.
You were the state historian for a bit there. Yeah.
I was the.
Yeah.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
I was.
Yes, you were.
And I was going to make some funny play on that. I was the unceded state historian. I was the unstate. Well, I was going to do something that played off the word state, but I can't think of what it's going to be.
Do we still have a state historian?
It's a group of them.
We do.
It's a consortium. It's a club. It's a very important club. There's like 3 or 4 of them, or council. What is it? Can you help me with this? It's a council of state historians, or a cohort, a sector?
Yeah, that sounds right. I like cohort.
It's not a clan.
It's
know
not.
That. Yeah.
No.
But you were replaced by a group.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, and I guess I want to take a second to comment on what we're doing now, which is we're laughing. And we just watched that thing. And there's every reason for us to not be laughing the way we're laughing, except that that's what I think more and more and more in reflections on serious subjects, if we're not remembering the other aspects of human nature, which would include laughter. Who has ever gone to a memorial service where you didn't at some point laugh? Where you're told a story and you think, oh, that's the person we're really missing. So the notion that it's somehow or other the right stance to go very somber and gloomy and grim when we have seen the worst parts of human nature, I more and more think, no, we're doing what we should be doing. We're laughing about whether it's a cohort or a council or whatever. And that is actually the proof that we're going to come out of this stuff.
I hope so. I think you're right, too. We had a program a while back where it was on the rise in hate crime in the U.S., and it was a panel, and we had the then director of the NAACP, Boulder County, which doesn't exist anymore, the head of the Boulder JCC, the head of what's now RMEQ, and I want to say Rocky Mountain Equality, which used to be out Boulder, and a number of other folks. I think maybe one other person. And I can't begin to tell you how these leaders got on backstage and how it was like nothing but laughter and having a good time amidst what was what they were dealing with some very serious life and death issues in relation to the public, to the people they serve, and yet they were able to maintain kind of lightness throughout, which I thought was really remarkable.
Right. Well, I know we're not quite going there, but
I know,
with Vine Deloria Jr., who taught at CU for 10 years, the most important American Indian intellectual of his time, many times. He, chapter 7, Vine's book, Custer Died for Your Sins, that's on Indian humor, and it begins with a statement and ends with a statement that when you know that a people can laugh at themselves, laugh at others, and hold all things in perspective, you know that people will survive. So, yay, Vine, who certainly practiced a sense of humor on everyone in his company, which would include me for a while. I was a wonderful target for hilarity when Vine was commenting on me. So, Dr. Limerick, that was my name. Dr. Limerick would have us believe. So anyway, just to say that that was a great Colorado resource, and we should be taking pride in his presence here every day.
And I feel like you carry that torch, the humor torch. And I
Oh,
appreciate it deeply.
Very serious, very serious.
Very serious. Well, speaking of serious, we're going to get back to being
let's be
serious. So the birth of the Klan, right? The Klan came out of post-Civil War.
Quite.
And it was a reaction
to Reconstruction, to the loss, the Confederate loss, and then to the Reconstruction, Northern Republicans trying to do something in the direction of making the South into a, we'll just say, civilized society. And Northern Republicans clumsy in some ways, not exactly paragons of humane qualities, all of them, but nonetheless really trying that. And so Reconstruction is an era where the people who have lost the Civil War keep getting reminded that they lost the Civil War. And the just vitriol at seeing something heading towards equality for African American people, the vitriol and rage that brought out in some specimens of humanity, that's where the Klan would come from. And if the Northern Republicans were going to try to give black people the vote and even have them hold office, then a reign of terror would be the response that these poor excuses for human beings took up. So I'm jumping ahead a little bit by saying, at least with that movement, you can see what they're responding to and have not an understanding and certainly no empathy or respect for it, but you can think that was a social condition that was so evident that they responded to it. I'm saying that to jump ahead to say the 1920s, not so clear what got these people in this mood and so stirred up. So we can come back to that. But the Reconstruction era was certainly an enormous era of change. I'm just going to throw in here that younger historians are doing amazing things. There's a whole group of young people who are looking at what Reconstruction meant in Indian territory. So we can see what Northern Republicans tried to do in reforming the South. They had far more power over the tribes in Indian territory, some of whom had sided with the Confederacy. So you can really see not quite so, well, an unrestrained exercise of power in the forced changes in Indian people's lives. So there's two forms of Reconstruction. One of them is with the North towards the South, and the other is white Northerners towards Indian tribes. And that's right. Oh, these darn young historians, they're coming up with things I would never have thought to ask all the time. So now when we say Reconstruction, we have to say, yes, it is about the South, but also about parts of the West as well.
Sure. Right. And so during the 20s, they were really, they weren't huge numbers. We're talking maybe, tens of thousands of people in the South. They were a little more paramilitary. They were violent. They existed to instill fear in people and to terrorize people.
In the 1860s.
Yeah, post Civil War, and they didn't wear. They wore maybe disguises, but they didn't wear hoods and white sheets and burn crosses and that sort of thing. That wasn't until the 20s.
Yep.
Yeah, the regalia and the pomp and circumstance around the Klan that we kind of think of and what was shown in that video really comes around in the late 19-teens into the 1920s with this rebirth of the Klan. We're talking more than 40 years later, almost 2 generations later, are taking up the regalia and the the motives and the name, the Ku Klux Klan, to serve their agenda for the moment. And there was a lot to be worried about, angry about, hate about coming into the 1920s. I think a lot of people overlooked that there was a recession of sorts in the late 20s following, I mean, not the late 20s, the late 19 teens following World War I. There was economic uncertainty. Grain prices and agriculture prices had fallen. There was, as they mentioned in the video, the car, shorter skirts, just like a big change culturally and also to the fabric of maybe what these towns looked like in terms of immigration, different groups coming in, and there was just all this anxiety around it. And I think the Klan is one of the outputs of that moment in time, and they're responding to a lot of different pressures than what was in the 1860s. They're two very different groups, even though they share the same name. And the biggest Klan membership was in Indiana, so it wasn't necessarily just a Southern thing. And it went on both party lines. There were many Republicans, which at the time, claimed to be the party of Lincoln, who were Klan members. I was reading the obituary of one known Klan member, and in his obituary said he loved Lincoln and was a proud Republican and loved American history, and how that all gets wrapped into this. They were all about patriotism, and they were criticized as being anti-patriotic by their by the groups that had come up to fight them.
I want to say a word about rebirths of movements.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it is tempting to think, oh, that is just like a streak of emotional and psychological infection that is just always running, and sometimes it goes into suppression and then it comes back up, almost as if it's malaria, that you think you're over it and then it comes back and so on. And as my feeling more and more is that is not a good way of thinking of it, that it is a constant infection that we suppress and then it comes back. I think it's done much more consciously and deliberately. I think that people far more deliberately say, I am going to take that up, and I will hide behind the notion that I'm part of a tradition. But it is really like, we just are going to do it. And we'll claim an ancestry, we'll claim a heritage, but that is much more of a performance of continuity than it is a real thing. And obviously I'm saying that because I do not like the idea that we just have this chronic infection that flares.
It relieves us of some responsibility.
Exactly.
Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you
we have a condition, and we occasionally have these Ku Klux Klan flare-ups.
Right. Well, right, and we don't. We say, people who are our fellow human beings will say, we are the restoration of a movement, or we are inspired by our predecessors, or claim some sort of lineage, which I think is really so, well, it's as manufactured as the hoods. It's just, no, that does not just happen. People do that deliberately, and other people, in some way or another, will almost defer to that and say, oh, yes, here's the Klan back again. But I don't know. I think that's really such a manipulation of choice or concealment of choice. So this sounds, I don't know what it is exactly. I know exactly what I'm trying to say.
Adds a certain gravitas to the movement, maybe?
Sure. Right. To claim roots.
It came out of nothing. I mean, it was totally manufactured. I mean, the Ku Klux Klan, I mean, just the name, it sounds as if it has some kind of historical basis, or that it comes from something archaic or ancient or super historical, but it's totally just patched together, somewhat inspired by the university Greek system. Ku comes from kuklos, the Greek word for circle or band. Klan is a deliberately archaic Scottish spelling of clan to give it a kind of faux heritage feel. And that was in the 20s, that was really part of the whole, Freemasons and all those other movements. That was like kind of a real, it was very popular during that time, right?
Yeah, there was no shortage of robes and heraldry and passwords and different groups. Many of these men and women were a part of many different fraternal or charitable groups that had similar kind of structuring to them. Just digging into Longmont history, we had, I guess, at least 24 different groups. Everything from the Masons to the Elks to the Odd Fellows. There were some groups that we maybe don't hear about anymore, like the Knights of Pythias or the Woodmen of the World. You delve into any of this, and I mean, a lot of our fraternities and sororities come from around this time too, and have a lot of the same kind of co-opting of Greek words and different histories. Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little more about the KKK in Longmont specifically?
Yeah, they met here in a few different places. I read in one of their meeting places was at 3rd and Martin on the southeast corner there, about where they're putting those new apartment buildings. They also met at the auditorium, which I believe would have been the auditorium at Roosevelt. We have another here from 1922. They met, had a secret meeting about 13 miles southwest of Longmont. They burned a cross on Haystack Mountain on July 18th, 1924, and it burned for quite a while, from 8:30 to midnight that night. They had parades down Main Street. In 1924, they had quite a few crosses get moved around town. They first lit a burning cross, which this was not a burning cross, this was an electric cross made with red lights on a municipal Christmas tree in front of City Hall. And then they moved it to the flagpole that was at 4th and Main. There's a lot of photos of that flagpole. That flagpole actually has been moved to Roosevelt Park. It still exists. They had placed a 8-foot, 8x5 red electric burning cross there. Both times, so that at the time for Christmas, the mayor at the time, who did have Klan leanings at one point, probably not unlike Stapleton, did order those taken down, that he said he hadn't authorized them, but they had been up for a few days. Eventually that cross was then moved in front of the Pillar of Fire Church, which is an interesting story if we want to delve deep into the Pillar of Fire Church, at 6th and Main, where it was said to represent the living Christ. Along with that, there were meetups in what do they call them, Claverns or something, in Roosevelt Park. A fun story that has been told through the generations is about one of the shoe stores, the menswear stores in town. Because Longmont was a fairly small town of less than 6,000 people, he said he could identify Klan members wearing their robes by the shoes because he sold them the shoes. There is another story that's been told to me about Klan members standing in front of the Catholic Church as Mass got out, just as an intimidation to those who were leaving church at the time, and that the men in the group kind of stood there. The Catholic men stood their ground, and they had a stare off as the women and children kind of packed into cars and left. So that's another interesting story that's come down. We do not have any membership lists. That hasn't survived. We do not have any robes or regalia in our collection. And we don't have any photos. It's interesting we don't have any photos because they had such large numbers in parades in Roosevelt. So if anyone's got anything hiding in their closets, I will not judge you.
So I know from Eric's book that on June 2nd, 1925, there was a pretty big march of 400 or 500 people. And metric moments, historians are always kind of amazed by this, that people will pay attention to history. You guys will pay attention to history all the time. Hi, all of you, thank you for coming and paying attention to history. But you're not normal, because Most other people only pay attention sporadically and episodically, and a round number, a multiple of 10 or 50 or whatever, people will pay attention for that. So those are not your people. Those people, but we must be kinder to them than I'm being right now. Anyway, so anniversaries, centennials, those are a big thing. And so when I was looking over Eric's book and thinking, 1925, June 2nd, parade of several hundred Klansmen, 1925, 100th anniversary this last summer of that. Would that have, how we celebrate, good Lord, how we observe anniversaries it's an opportunity. Should there have been a bunch of really serious people dressed in black crowding that street, Main Street, and to commemorate, to observe, not to celebrate, that happened in this town. That happened here on that street. And that's me getting at the question of how are we to live with this heritage? Not self-indulgent, now I feel so guilty. I was far from being born at that time. I mean, how am I going to feel guilty for that? But just how do we acknowledge that it happened on this space, in this town? And that, to me, is the great question that the nation is not doing well at. The notion that if we say every now and then on Main Street, remember that crowd in 1925, as soon as you remember that in 1927, the election turned that around. The election was very much, Klan's not doing it anymore. So by all means, think back to the horror of so many people in such a dreadful movement, 1925. In 1927, the election turned that around. Now that would be something
The
to
people
celebrate.
kicked him out.
So could we do that? Can the museum do something on what, I can't remember what the date is for that election, but we could celebrate that election, 1927 centennial?
Sign me up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Great. And then I wanted to say something about the making up of mythic nonsense of Ku Klux Klans. I mean, they're so silly. You would think for humor, just grown men looking so goofy. And it's okay. So that's just something that it's a wonder that there weren't just ways to, just to greet them with laughter. I just read a most wonderful article by a young historian, Daniel Burge, who wrote about all the people who did not support, all the white men, some of them in Congress, who did not support Manifest Destiny. So in the 1840s and early 1850s, there were a significant number. It was not a nationally sweeping the everyone movement. So there were some people who really opposed Manifest Destiny and spoke very honestly about that. A bunch of them actually were in Congress. In one particular occasion, a member of Congress who very much supported Manifest Destiny and had bought every notion that white people were destined to rule, he was giving a talk. I guess it was really the first talk in Congress that was wholeheartedly in favor of Manifest Destiny. The people who disagreed with him, I just read this article a week ago, and Daniel Burge brought this to our attention, young historians, woohoo. He said that what happened apparently was that the critics of this man, who is just in a massive, we will dominate because we are white and we deserve that, instead of shouting at him or interrupting him, there were just roars of laughter. So I've never read a better first paragraph in an article in the Western Historical Quarterly in my life. To see that, but to see through this whole article how much humor was used as a voice of opposition on that. So because I read that article and looking at those pictures of these goofy people, you just think, really? And I understand that you're masked and you can do terrible things and say terrible things because nobody can see who you are and so on, but that's the silliest disguise anyone could think of. If someone said to bank robbers, you might try that. I'm not sure if they're still bank robbers. You'd think that the tellers, that these people would come into the bank, and maybe if they're showing their firearms, that'd be one thing. But if they just came in and said, give us your money, everyone would say, hey, it's not Halloween, huh? What are you doing here? What's going on?
Yeah.
So there's something about that. But I also want to say, the last actually thing I meant to say is that Ku Klux Klan, that's a funny phrase. But a really funny phrase, where'd you guys get that? 100% Americanism? Okay. Anybody who has followed Thomas Jefferson and John Adams knows that those people tried to tear each other apart rhetorically, and they did put their friendship back together, but that was one not congenial, let's unite in a new nation. So what on earth could what kind of blinding nostalgia could cause people to use a phrase that says 100% Americanism as if there had ever been anything remotely like that? It's a goofier phrase.
It's hard to talk about purity when it comes to America in that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So there's something that is so, I don't know what, I guess it's, maybe there is no particular power in humor. Maybe I'm holding to that against the odds there, but it just seems like we could and should be able to say, this is the silliest movement, terrifying. I'm not trying to minimize it in any way. Oh, and I wanted to say that about the numbers, however many numbers there were, that made me think of how numbers do not really tell us much. So to say that there were 30,000 members of the Klan in Denver, whatever, or to say that some people have estimated it's more. If you're subject to their power, who cares about the total of the number? The terrifyingness and the brutality of it and the cruelty of it, it's just one of those things that it's not a measure of numbers. It's really, you could have a fairly significant population, you could have a majority, you could have a minority, and it would still be terrifying to know that those people had that power and were exercising it and thought that they were on some kind of justified cause. So I think there's many occasions where we are thinking, oh, we'll get the numbers on that. Well, let's get the membership rolls, let's look at that. As if we would really have anything but the confrontation with demonic human behavior. And quantifying it wouldn't really take that down.
Yeah, they were just making numbers up, I think, most of the time, including about their finances, too. When John Galen Locke is brought in for tax evasion, he was mixing his own personal money with Klan money. He didn't believe in banks. He was hiding cash in boxes in his backyard, buried in the ground. It wasn't, they were not the most organized in that way.
And so to talk about how the clown.
Well, there you are. Yep.
Because I was going to say they kind of look like clowns, and I said the Klan. Anyway, the Klan. Tell us how the Klan kind of went out of power here in Longmont. What led to their demise here in Longmont in particular?
I think a lot of it is connected with what was going on statewide and also nationally. It wasn't necessarily their ideals that brought them down, but it was their hypocrisy in a lot of ways. They had set themselves up as being these good Christian, temperance, Protestant men, and many of them had mistresses. Many of them were drinking. There was a lot of payoffs, a lot of money getting thrown around, a lot of cooking of the books, and paying people to vote one way on the Klan way on juries and such like that. And this started to really come out. It's really a story of a snake eating its own tail, too. I kind of joked that the story is like Mean Girls on steroids, where you've got, these henchmen that, when they're not getting what they want or their way, or they find out that their leader is not including them, and they just kind of turn on each other. A good example of that is the gentleman with the newspaper in Grand Junction starts using his newspaper and starts, saying all of these things against them. Here in Longmont, and not only was John Galen Locke, he had this kidnapping incident that he went to court for and was found guilty. He also had this tax evasion, but the Grand Wizard, and his last name is Evans. No, it wasn't Evans. Okay, I can't remember. Maybe you can remember. There is one of the Klan leaders had a young woman that he took back home with him and had raped. to the point in which she tries to commit suicide by drinking poison. She actually escapes and lives for another few weeks, but eventually does die. But in that time period, she was able to tell this whole story that was pretty sordid. And that comes out in 1926 or so. Do you remember the name of this gentleman? Simmons? Okay. One of the Indiana guys. And so that doesn't help them. Here in Longmont, what seems to really rally up, at least in the newspapers and the official record, is the school board election. There was 4 men all going for school board. There was active debates throughout town. 2 of them were Klan members, 2 of them were not. And a group in town, this was a wider organization, but we did have a group called the Visible Government League here in Longmont, and they were in Denver, and they were a wider group. They had sprung up to fight the Klan specifically, and they start taking out ads. Them and the Klan are taking out ads in these different newspapers all around the same time, and we're talking about 1 year's worth of time here. It's a very short period. And the Visible Government League really starts pushing this school board election of don't let the Klan start making decisions about schools. We are a little confused about what exactly the Klan wanted to do with the Longmont schools. Overarchingly, they did want to put a Protestant Bible in every classroom. That was one of their big promises. It's interesting, the Boulder newspaper the editor was like, come on, Klan, tell us what you want to do. There was definitely an anti-Klan article, but they were kind of putting them to task of, okay, you say you want to run our schools, but what do you actually want to do? In the end, Longmont School District does go to Klan members, so the Visible Government League was not successful. But things really start to turn from 1924 to 1925. While they might win that election, they lost in many other places, in many other towns. So it's interesting because there's that March and June. Was it 24, right? 24 is June. They have another march, almost 100 years to the day, guys. November 12th, 1925, on Veterans Day. And I'm going to read you the little excerpt here. The headline is, KK Klan refused to salute flag on Longmont's pole. The only organization that did not salute the American flag as they passed the memorial pole on to honor the dead in Longmont yesterday was the Ku Klux Klan unit that was forced out of the parade by the Boulder delegation. The Kluxes proceeded up Main Street in advance of the parade without a single word of applause or handicapping. As they passed the flagpole, which all organizations saluted, there were demands from the crowd to, quote, uncover. They passed the pole without even making a hand salute. This is the pole on which Longmont Klan also erected a Klan cross last Christmas, but which they were forced to take down by public opposition before the holiday season was over. Also, that school board election had the biggest turnout that Longmont had ever seen in an election. Over 2,000 people voted, and again, we had less than 6,000 people overall, including like women and children. Women could vote, but like children, young people who couldn't vote. So that was actually a pretty large turnout, almost 40% of voting Longmonters came out for that election. I think all of the ads, all of the newspaper articles, the debates in town really led to more interest and kind of like awareness about the Klan that resulted, along with all what was going on nationally. And then there was also all of this corruption. They had taken over this project to build a dam, Chimney Rock Dam, and they were siphoning money and paying their own, their friends. They were putting people in charge of the project, giving them jobs when they weren't qualified. And that was another big, like a pork belly project that resulted in them being ousted here.
It was a massive failure, and you can still see the remnants of Chimney Rock.
Yeah, never finished.
Dam up there by Button Rock Dam, if you ever hike up there.
And they used the extra concrete to pave Main Street.
Yeah, the concrete that was going to be used for the dam was used to pave Main Street, right? So do you think there's remnants of that? I think they've paved it since.
I kind of wanted to ask the people working on Kaufman, was like, do you find anything cool and old? Like, where is this first level of concrete?
Amazing. Do you have any more for us regarding Longmont and the KKK?
You know, here's an interesting little factoid. What year is this from? 1926. That 6 out of 9 Protestant ministers were Klansmen. They do quickly start using, after there's like a fission between the two, or scission? I don't know what the word is. Between the Klan and John Galen Locke, they start getting called the Minutemen by then. So we start getting members of the Minutemen in the newspapers. There is a really interesting, by 1928, I found an article about Longmont Cluxers to pull off masks by order of the wizard, is the headline. Hooded hobgoblins to be thing of past under policy of order to abandon secrecy. And so this was the wizard of the larger national clan, in order to kind of try to regain respectability, had ordered everyone to no longer wear the hooded masks.
I wanted to say something about the hypocrisy. Well, I wanted to say something about the whole framework that they do themselves in, which is certainly a comfort. And one dreams that it might be true.
Patty, what are you getting at?
Thank you. But I do want to say that I don't know that hypocrisy is much of a concern for anyone who practices hypocrisy. It seems like that might be the route to success.
Short-term, short-lived success.
I wouldn't say we have a lot of evidence to support that right now. So I just think something got deadened in public feelings about hypocrisy. And how wonderful that for all of the diversity of American people, that a good share of them could say, well, that doesn't make any sense. They're saying one thing and doing another, and they're reprehensible in their private lives, and that would be a concern and thought to be a vulnerable flank. So that's, to me, is a moment of thinking, what happened to that, and how could we re-engage those nerves? Could the neurosurgeons do something about that? So I want to quote from someone who was concerned in this time period, right in the middle of the 1920s, about the risks to the values of the United States. And so I will quote that this person is saying, if he and his people, like-minded people, don't take action, no more would America be a land of liberty, justice, and equality, a land of resources and opportunity, the land of virgin hope, the land of the ideals and aspirations of our forefathers. Well, who said that? John Galen Locke. So is that even the devil can quote scripture moment? Can the devil quote scripture so persuasively and effectively? I always thought that if you are the devil and you start quoting from Jesus, people are going to say, now that's odd. The devil is quoting from Jesus, and that isn't impressing us. But there's something that chilled me when I read that quotation from Locke and just thought, he's playing every card there. He's not saying, hating this nation and hoping to see it brought down and then rebuilt as we want it. He's using all of that language. It's just pretty interesting to see him do that and to think how, well, again, if you deaden the nerve that detects hypocrisy and inconsistency, then people keep using that language, and the deadened nerve, you have to think, well, it's wonderful to hear American values so forcefully spoken of. So what a peculiar thing. But I wanted to take just a moment or two, if it's okay, to say something about my wonderful predecessor in Western American history, Robert Goldberg, who wrote this crucial book, 1981, Hooded Empire, the Ku Klux Klan in Colorado. And I know him. He came when we were doing the programs on the Stapleton neighborhood. We did a couple of programs on that. And so Professor Goldberg came for that. So I've read that book in the past, and for this evening I was looking at it again. week, and I thought, this man is something I can't live up to. Bob Goldberg, in this book, interviewed, he was working on this in the 1970s, he interviewed surviving Klan members, still living Klan members. To get the interviews, he had to work under an alias, because when they saw the name Goldberg, wouldn't talk to him. So Bob Goldberg, he saw and heard and knew plenty. It wasn't until now, I mean, I've read it before, but it wasn't until now, thank you for this, because I thought, this guy's heroic. I can't live up to him. I would like to aspire. I'm going to give you a few quotations of what he says in this book. That the majority of the Klan's members were ordinary Americans who lived and worked much the same as their ancestors and descendants. This study attempts to treat the Ku Klux Klan as a social movement rather than a pathological assembly of deviant men and women. Like all social movements, this was a formally organized group which consciously sought to promote or resist change through collective action. Social movements are rooted not in individual psychosis or breakdowns, but in society's integrating mechanisms. But instead in confrontations with real community problems. So Bob Goldberg, in various passages, is saying this was not a great situation that these folks were in. I do want to say it seems that they're working pretty hard to be victims. And that's a competition that we're all occasionally players in. So I think they have to work a lot harder in the 1920s. And again, the professional range of people from every social class, including many professionals and doctors and sadly some professors, professors. So there's something just very puzzling about how they, well, first, why they put so much into seeing themselves as victims, and then why they were able to perform that without eventually starting to laugh. Without, I mean, the physicians, the doctors, the lawyers, to see themselves as piteously oppressed victims, you think, you guys worked really hard to do that. How'd you pull that off? How'd you get up in the morning and think, oh yes, of course, remember, I'm a victim. I forgot about that. I thought I was a well-paid attorney, but I'm not. No, that's only part of it. So there's something about the psychological effects of that are quite, but then just to go back to Bob Goldberg, and what I never noticed until I was reading it over this time, what an act of let us put more into understanding them than to doing what I was just doing of mocking and condemning and so on. Only when we remove our conceptual blinders can such an organization as the Ku Klux Klan be understood. Still quoting from him. Considering the circumstances, the Klan was a realistic response, swallowing to say this, but to legitimate grievances and needs. Normal men created and participated in the organization because local problems threatened to disrupt accustomed lifestyles. Okay. These men, he says, responded to the call to save their homes and community from disruptive groups. He says very clearly, in case you're starting to worry about Bob Goldberg, he says none of the things he's saying are to support or endorse or applaud, but he would like to try to understand. And I have spent time with him. We once had a very energetic argument about whether the West was defined as a region. Boy, passions there, boy, big passions on that one. Well, it's a wonder that friendship survived that. But I'm so struck now by what he was committing himself to doing there. And I know that some pundit somewhere, or 49 pundits, are all writing to exhort us to talk to people we disagree with and so on. As we're sitting here, they're writing the same op-ed piece they wrote every day. But it just was to see him do that when he had to use an alias to get interviews. I thought, I shall be aspiring never to be his equal, because I'm never getting there, but just to see if I can do that. Okay. I'm going to try to understand. Which is not, as he says, it is not endorse or sympathize or anything like that, but to understand. So I had to, sometimes you can just say, you'll find this online and Kindle, but I wanted to read this. This really exists. This book exists, and this man wrote it in that spirit. So hooray, Professor Goldberg, you make professors look good.
That's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. We could talk about this all night, and I do love...
I thought we were going to.
Oh, yeah. How much time do you guys have? I do love kind of ending on that, on not demonizing people and pathologizing them, or I think that's a great...
Boy, the deep breathing I'm doing,
yeah.
Even though I realize he's more or less quoting me, no, okay. So, okay, good, okay, yes.
But
okay.
I do want to, the night is, it's getting on here. I do want to open things up to Q&A, because I imagine there are questions out there. I do want to remind you all that to please make it a question you're asking and not a long statement you're making. And, if you can keep it brief and concise so that other folks can ask their questions and have them answered, that would be terrific. Now, Elizabeth, if I could steal your microphone, I'm going to give it to Megan here, and she's going to run it around the room, and then you two can share. How about Elizabeth's shoes this evening, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, let's see. Do we have any questions? We have one right there. Okay.
Yes. I'm Melissa Penn. I live here. What Mr. Goldberg is doing is practicing tikkun olam, which is to repair the world and gather the fragments. It's an essential core of Judaism. My question to you is that I hear the same. One of the things I do for fun is I go to different churches in Colorado. Just to hear what the sermons are. And the very statements that I've heard from the Ku Klux Klan and various other hate groups in America that we're pretending are in the past are being spoken every Sunday in churches here. Jesus Camp was filmed 40 miles from here. So my question is, do you see a parallel in these times? And if you do, why do you think historically it repeats if it's not a virus?
That's a good question. Because I am going to be, used to be that grim phrase, I'll be going to my grave thinking that human beings have free will. And sometimes they are so restricted and constrained that they cannot exercise that because other human beings are exercising their free will and squishing that in others. But I just am not ready to say, oh, that is a cycle that runs, because that is so charged with inevitability that that was such a nice thing of George Santayana, the philosopher, to say that if we don't study history, history repeats itself. It was so nice of him to say that, and he didn't even have a PhD in history. He didn't even care about our people, really. But it's not a good thing to have said, because that's like, oh, we're on the Ferris wheel, and we just go around and around, and if we don't study the Ferris wheel, we will, I mean, I don't know what that, there's something that doesn't make sense in what George Santayana said, that we will just keep repeating. Each era is so different. Can you imagine what the Klan would have been with social media? I'm thinking about the 1920s version. I'm doing one of those stupid things where I'm trying to get us out of one time. Well, right. They did so much damage without social media. I suppose that's how I'm saying. And so some versions of that certainly have been chosen and picked up. I'm still not going to go with the cycle just ran. So I wish in the afterlife, I'd like to visit with George Santayana and just say, did you think you were helping us by giving us that very fatalistic sense that history repeats itself? Because what are we supposed to do if that's what's happening? So that's where I guess I'm so fighting the virus that flares up from time to time, because that does seem to be a version of forces that are not at all in our control run the course of history. And I will not want to live on a moving sidewalk that just goes where it goes. Oh, now we're at the part where the hatred surges. Oh, thank heavens, now we're at the part where something, whether it's distress over hypocrisy or something, interferes, or just, well, when does it happen? There are amazing books written about efforts to reach people that work, and that people actually do see themselves and examine themselves and think about why they have been doing what they've been doing and change it. But boy, are those rare stories. So anyway, so I guess I just have to keep going with the applied history, which is what I get to do now, is an anti-inevitability delivery device. And thank you. Thank you. I'm sort of playing to the technology people with that one a little bit of. I call my students, my applied history students who she's met, I call them the Insight Production Team at the University of Colorado. So I just think the key insight is, no, we are not fated. No, we cannot say this is just, we're just running through another one of those eras. But what is it that we say instead? And that's where I have to say to you, I'm not sure I'm going to do much to rise to your question, because expressing my dismay, I've never bored myself so much as I have since the inauguration this year, because I just think the same things over and over again. And that is not my custom. My custom is usually to think, what? Where did I come up with that? That doesn't make any sense. But instead, I just run the same cycle of, well, this is bad. Venezuela? A war? That's bad. So I put anything in there of the latest news cycle, and you'll find me thinking, well, that's bad. And you won't notice any change from that. So I do believe we have choice, but I'm not sure how we exercise that in a way that has impact now.
I mean, I think you can see obvious parallels between periods where the Klan arose and times of great change and great anxiety. You saw these flare-ups, and I did reach out to the Anti-Defamation League before this program, and there is a rise in white supremacist organizations. The KKK, not so much. I mean, the KKK is pretty dead these days. There's no recognized active groups in Colorado. I mean, there was when this was filmed. They don't recognize any in Colorado. It's a very small. There are some active groups, but they're very small. That said, there are definitely other groups out there who share some similarities. Yes.
And I would always be weary of groups that are co-opting history and ideas of patriotism going back to the revolution or anything like that, and kind of question their motives. I have friends who are American Revolutionary War reenactors who will go down to Boston in their outfits, and I worked at Fort Ticonderoga with them, which is this fort that saw the Revolutionary War, and they would get and this was in 2017, so they were getting a lot of interesting questions, kind of assuming like, oh, are you a Tea Party member? Are you, just like this idea, we've already kind of engrossed ourselves in this idea of like what those like images mean to us now, and in place and putting them on history. I do want to, I have this idea, okay, I've never said this out loud, so don't judge me too much, but I've had this idea for a while of which humans there's something tribal or almost animalistic about the way maybe we have been meant to have these small villages in which we know everyone in and know where we all stand in our own little hierarchies in that village. And in encountering another village, there is are you friends or foes? And there is probably always going to be a significant number of that village is going to be like, oh, you must be foes because I don't know anything about you. That will immediately take that action. And then you pair that with the drive for power, which maybe can be even devolved down to just the needing to be loved and liked or something like that. I think we see that in John Galen Locke and also Clarence Morley, of needing this for whatever reason to have power. And John Galen Locke changes his positions on things, and he starts his own organization in order to keep that power. I think that's why things keep coming back in different ways, in not understanding who the other person is in a deep way, and seeing them as, and knowing them to a level at which you're like, oh no, your village is just like ours. And then also pairing that with those folks who will take advantage of that fear in order to gain power.
Let's take some more questions.
I just want to go back to your statements about history repeating itself, and I thought the quotation had to do with, if we don't know history, history repeats itself. And I think I'm wondering if that isn't, because I'm trying to phrase this as a question, but it's probably better stated. I think that the problem today is most people don't know history.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, true. True. And okay, so I'm not sure how they're supposed to get it or have it. So yeah, exactly. Right. Right, and now I think it's an enormous problem, and that's why applied history is my passion. So I'm going to say, though, that the academic profession has gone very inward. Historians write for other historians, and there are many exceptions to that, but there are plenty of cases where people do great historical research that the public is never going to hear because it's written in jargon and so on. So there's a tremendous resource. I guess I will say it's like renewable energy, which the solar resource, wind resource is concentrated where people are not. So you have to have the transmission lines. Okay, university history departments are like that. There are no transmission lines.
Can you wait for the microphone, please?
I'm sorry. How many of us? I've watched Henry Louis Gates on PBS, and his programs on history, the Civil War, Reconstruction. We never learned any of that, and I was in a good school system.
Well, okay, so I think there's nothing that we could possibly disagree about here, because we would like to have more history taken seriously. I'm still going to go back to the delivery system. How do we get it from where it is concentrated, where people will never know? That article I just wrote about, the people who hated Manifest Destiny, who were white guys in Congress, well, we should know about them. Those are, okay, so, but what I want to say is that there's a bedrock that I'm often tiptoeing around a little bit. Do we really know that if people knew history, they'd be guided by it? I wrote a piece in the Daily Camera a few weeks ago because the students in the section at football student section were shouting. We were playing BYU. They were shouting obscenities about Mormons, and so I wrote a piece in the Daily Camera about how I said, I think I might have been lying, but I said, I believe that if they knew something about Mormon history, those students would never do that. If they knew about the episode in Missouri in the 1830s when a militia attacked a Mormon settlement, killed 19 people, including 3 children, if the students knew about the Hallis Mill massacre, would they be shouting that? Well, I said, I thought if they knew that, they wouldn't do it. I don't know if that's true or not. So I don't really know that there is a immunization of the soul that comes with knowing history. I don't know that. And I want to give a tribute to the fellow who was my freshman history teacher, my Western Civ teacher, Jasper Rose. He was British, he's very eccentric. And one day we were talking about the Reformation and Calvinism, in the sense that there is a darkness at the core of human beings, and the fall in Genesis stays with us. So I was chatting with Mr. Rose afterwards. I said, I'm like 17. Mr. Rose, when you were talking about sin and the darkness at the center of the soul of human beings, I almost thought you believed that. He said, and he spoke in these weird British ways, he said, just wait, ducky, just wait. So that's what I worry about. I couldn't agree more, get more history out there, but I just think there's something about human nature that those of us who think, I just think if those kiddos knew about Mormon history, they wouldn't shout obscenities. Well, maybe.
Unfortunately, I think we have time for maybe one question. Right down here.
Really brief in answering this time, so maybe we could have two.
Hi, thank you for your presentation tonight. My question is much less esoteric. You mentioned the silliness of the words Ku Klux Klan. It doesn't mean anything in particular. And I'm wondering about the names, kind of puerile names like the Grand Cyclops and the Dragon and the Wizard and who knows who else from Fantasyland. Like, do you have any comment about that? Why was it so successful?
I mean, you were speaking of that. I'm just going to hand this over to you in a second, because there have been really goofy groups through millennia. I'm going to say that. I don't really know that. But this one is not dramatically goofier than other things. And you confessed that you were a member of one such goofy groups, not toxic groups, but goofy groups. So I don't know that there's any limit to what people will do. I will say university robes and hats are really silly. Really, really silly. So I don't know that we have any particular limitations on when we say, that's too silly. And we have, this is a phrase a friend came up with, we have a proliferating number of vice chancellors on our campus. I think we're up to 14 or maybe 40, I don't know, but there's a lot of them. And a friend of mine, when we were talking about that, said, well, we just have a whole flotilla of vice chancellors. I thought, well, we do. And at a certain point, the vice chancellors must look at themselves and think, this is really silly. There's so many of us. And then there are associate vice chancellors and assistant. So at some point, the academic thing is just about as goofy.
Not quite.
Well, okay. Please, I'm
but
trying
close,
to say,
but close.
I'm confusing the thing, because I am not saying that they're as toxic. I'm not saying that.
No.
Okay, good. Okay. Well,
not quite.
I think there's a certain amount of bonding over the silliness with all of these different groups. So I was in a co-ed band fraternity. Anyone here members of Kappa Kappa Psi? Anyone? One? Woo! Yeah. So being from not a big giant football state, we had a co-ed band fraternity, and it was technically a service fraternity that helped put up the chairs and take down the chairs at concerts and lug all the stuff for marching band, football games and things like that. But it was formed in 1917 in Oklahoma. And there was a whole, this was around the same time, there is all these things to memorize. There's robes, there's secrets, there's initiation ceremonies. And it would be the rush would, and I assume that other sororities and fraternities are like this, was a lengthy thing. And it was about kind of parceling out who gets along with the group, right? Like, who's going to be your buddy for the next 4 years. And in a way it was fun though, right? There was all these activities, I mean, not unlike the fairs and things that the Klan was putting on, hosting these meetups and food related and watching movies. And we used to do a thing in our particular fraternity where we wore prom dresses and went bowling. So yeah, I think that's where the silliness comes from, is that it creates this kind of quick bonding to feeling like you're part of the group, part of the clique.
Right. Just very quickly, belonging is something that human beings like. And they can take it in very positive ways and move it, and they can take it in very toxic ways. So, belonging. I live on the Hill, and I walk by fraternities and sororities. Period.
That's a good place to end, I think.
One more, because we were pretty quick.
Oh, you want to take one more? Oh, okay. We're going to take one more bonus question. Oh, all the way on the other side of the room, Megan. I'm sorry. He's going to change his mind by the time you get there. Oh, okay.
I agree. It was also a really great presentation.
You don't seem to be
on. Thank you once again for a great presentation. I was just going to ask a question about kind of the resurgence in the 1920s. Which president, in your opinion, did more to allow the Klan to rise? Was it Theodore Roosevelt's eugenics movement, or Woodrow Wilson's playing the birth of a nation at the White House? Because both presidents contribute to kind of the rise there, and I was curious which one you thought more contributed, considering we have issues now with our current government allowing it to rise.
I'll hand off, but boy, speaking of people who have studied history, good heavens, we have an individual there. And so pathetically, I was a huge fan of Woodrow Wilson when I was a child. I read a biography, and I wanted him to have succeeded in creating the League of Nations and so on. And I was very advanced in age before I thought, that guy segregated the civil service. So you're right. I don't know if presidents matter in this particularly, but here.
I don't know. I mean, Coolidge didn't really speak out against them until kind of near the end, and it was only kind of half-hearted thing. I mean, I think actually I don't think we can talk about this moment without mentioning eugenics and also the theory of evolution. While I was looking at newspapers, that was also a topic that was coming up in a debate that was happening locally and nationally about teaching evolution in schools. And ultimately, at that point, it was seen like, well, this is the scientific narrative that we want our children to learn rather than the religious narrative. But, out of that grows this idea of having, like, some races better than others, or, I mean, one of the Klan's proposals was to sterilize epileptics and the feeble-minded. That was one of the other articles that I found. And yeah, this idea that had taken hold of like the strongest wins, and that we can control in a scientific way what humanity. I mean, in one way, it's very optimistic. They thought that they could cure homelessness and poverty through eugenics, but it was very misguided and went to being, pretty terrible for quite a lot of people and creating a lot of harm.
I think it's such a puzzle to figure out when confidence of that sort, we are the ones who should not be sterilized, which is quite a confident remark to make about yourself. So, let's not be quoting that, but my impression, this by the way came from 12 years in the Ivy League, that it's a good theory and often a proven theory that a lot of confidence, as in Klan, we are the people, is a not very thick veneer over fear and doubt, self-doubt and inability to think clearly about who you really are. So now what have I done bringing the Ivy League in on this? But you can see arrogance and confidence in any university, I suppose. But the notion that you should be intimidated by that, when if you just push a little bit more, you can see the anxiety and doubt that performance of confidence conceals. So that's, I guess, what I would, maybe I'm trying to do my Bob Goldberg thing of saying, well, that's kind of pathetic. to be that certain that you are the ideal human specimen, that is just a sign of saying, feel sorry for me. In a way that I would like to feel sorry. Well, if somebody in that stance probably does feel something that is not 100% all the way through confidence and projecting schemes for domination onto others is one way to cope with that, I guess. But just saying what got into you to make you push so hard to claim your superiority is really an interesting thing to say, although I wouldn't begin the conversation with that particular question. So.
Okay. Well, I hope you all learned a little something this evening. I know I did. I want to thank our very own Elizabeth Beaudoin, Curator of History here. And Boulder and Colorado's treasurer, Patty Limerick. Thank you for joining us. And thank you all for coming. Please drive safe and study your history. I feel like we should just have like a chat with Patty, like a checking in with Patty program. You know, where we're like, what's on your mind kind of program.